Hamas militants are doomed ahead of the IDF's invasion.
He also says that troops have already eliminated thousands of terrorists in his operations, but the ramifications of the ground attack have caused some world leaders to advise caution and delay to Israel. Latterly, French President Emanuel Macron has overnight called it an error. Delighted now to be joined live from Tel Aviv, the former Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Barak. Mr. Barak, thank you so much indeed for joining us. Let's start by asking you what you make of Netanyahu's strategy, this proposed ground offensive, as, in his words, the only way to wipe out Hamas. Your thoughts, sir?
It's happened to be true. We suffered a major blow, a barbaric attack on our civilians, slaughtering some, probably it will rise to over 1,600 people. That's the equivalent of the UK losing from a Daesh-like operation inside the UK, a civilian loss of 12,000. So there is no way but to, Israel has a compelling imperative to paralyze all the military capability of Hamas and the people who perpetrated it. And that cannot be completed from the air, with all due respect to President Macron. I spent 36 years in army and then many years as a Prime Minister and Minister of Defense. It is impossible to execute it from the air, so we have to deploy on the ground. Maybe more than one version, but it doesn't matter, so it will come. It will come, I don't know exactly when, but for sure before our next interview.
And Ehud, you've criticised PM Netanyahu and his actions in response to Hamas attacks. In your opinion, where has he gone wrong thus far?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Repeat it, please.
Oh, OK. Sorry. You've said previously that you've been critical of Netanyahu's response to the attacks by Hamas and the way in which he's going about this ground offensive. Can you clarify what that criticism is?
No, I'm one of the harshest critiques in the Israeli public arena of Netanyahu, even before this event. And so it's not, I criticize many things that he's doing, including his strategy vis-a-vis the Hamas, which was basically Hamas is an asset and the Palestinian Authority is a liability rather than the other way around. As well as I criticize his avoiding of having a discussion within the cabinet when the Minister of Defense, the head of the armed forces, the head of intelligence, all demanded several months ago to have a discussion in the government and in the cabinet of the imminent and apparent risk to our national security, as they defined it, stemming out of his running amok towards certain judicial reform, as he called it, which I called judicial coup d'etat. But that is not relevant now, because now we are focused together, we united in order to focus around the objective of making sure that Hamas will be erased from its
Mr. Barak,
kind of undressed from his military capabilities.
Mr. Barak, I completely agree with you. I think there's a lot of people who would say that Netanyahu's eye was off the ball for months. He was concentrating on the judicial things, and certainly for a country whose surveillance and security has been world-renowned, it was a massive shock on the 7th of October. Can I just ask you one final question? I know you're a busy man. The world quite rightly recoiled in horror on the 7th of October and was universal in its condemnation that this terrorist organisation that carried out some of the worst atrocities ever seen on women and children needs to be taken out. But you as a politician will know that the rhetoric changes as the conflict continues, and certainly in the last few days and hours. The humanitarian disaster that's unfolding in Gaza, despite Israelis' warnings, the fact about stuff not getting through, the fact that you have to soften up targets with bombing, there is going to be a humanitarian disaster. And what I want is your answer to this. Obviously, Israel has a right to deal with Hamas for what it did to its people. What do you say to the critics, the Macrons who will say, oh, is it right to pause? Is a ceasefire right? As an ex-Prime Minister, what do you think is important here?
Israel is committed to international law. We do our best to avoid what's called collateral damage, but really the killing of innocent civilians on the other side. We warn from day one. We point to the neighborhoods that we are going to attack. We repeat it. We give time to live. Some 700,000 out of the about 1 million people in the northern part of Gaza already moved to the southern part as recommended. The others are held there under a point of a gun by the Hamas. Hamas uses deliberately the civilian population as a human shield. They block them from moving to the right places. So Hamas cannot get impunity after those barbaric attacks, slaughtering whole families. I don't want even to go into details of these atrocities. They cannot get impunity by just using the international law and holding themselves with a human shield. We do our best. We try to minimize it, but there will be certain price for it.
Absolutely.